Ruby Doobie Movies, Judas Cinema Closet, JT the Talking Head, Teo the Terminurtle, Zedzilla Movies, Masters of Matinee.
Welcome back to the Masters of Matinee podcast. I am your host, Teo the Terminurtle, along with
Zedzilla Movies.
And we caused an insurrection. JT is gone. He is no longer a part of this podcast, and we are taking over this court of Congress. No, okay, we can't start like that.
We could start like that because it's kind of fun. Just the two boys, the two chitlins left home alone. You're supposed to be babysitting me, but now I feel like I'm babysitting you. It's a whole thing. It's crazy.
And we left the popcorn in the microwave, and now that's just fucking burning. There's smoke everywhere.
It's on round 4. I set it for 30 minutes apiece.
Oh my gosh!
Look, all I'm going to chime in and say is that there are good people on both sides, and I urge you both to just go home. Just okay. I'm going to tweet that out later today.
Oh
Teo,
my gosh!
We're talking the pandemic era of Pixar today. That's sort of where we want to bounce off. And I just want to list the 6 movies that I count as the core pandemic Pixar. And that is Onward, Soul, Luca, Turning Red, Lightyear, and Elemental. Now, a lot of folks may hear Onward and think, well, I saw that one in theaters. Well, it came out early March, the 6th of March of 2020. So it's one of the last movies a lot of people saw in theaters. But then it went straight over to Disney Plus with like a $20 or $30 fee at the time. It was crazy.
I do remember that.
But then Soul came out Christmas and gave us a bunch of, it gave us something to watch with the lot of us and family dinners and social gatherings. But that was the 2020 era where Onward and Soul, and then we move on to the rest of them. But let me just start off. Out of the 6 movies that I mentioned, which one's your favorite?
Oh man, that's a very hard question to answer because I love them all for like very specific reasons.
Era, man. It's a solid era.
That was a very good era with like one film that like we both were like, that one was probably not that great, but like the remainder of them, those are some amazing films. I will say I remember whenever Soul came out. I remember just like watching that movie, and I think they posted that on Disney Plus where you didn't have to like pay extra.
Free. It was
that one was like free.
Essentially.
And we definitely watched that movie at least twice, if not like 3 times, like in the month that it came out, just because because it was like we just need like new content to watch. I think the only like cartoon besides that one that had come out was Scoob, which was I mean it was okay. But no, I really loved that movie. I really resonated with it and like clicked. And then Turning Red is such a beautiful story. That is a beautiful movie. Takes place during one of my favorite like time periods. When I found out that movie takes place, when I found out that film takes place in 2002, and just all the like pop culture kind of like references and like Easter eggs and whatnot, incredible. But then about a month ago, me and my wife watched Elemental. And speaking so by the time this comes out, the Valentine's Day will have probably passed. But that movie is like perfect for like a Valentine's Day like time with your spouse or your significant other. That's like a true like. Is that the first time Pixar has done a true like a true romance?
Besides the opening Up. I mean, they did do between Woody and Bo Peep in Toy Story 4. I mean, there are love elements, but literally the love element of Elemental is its whole ordeal of, being this sort of Romeo and Juliet.
Right,
They're
yeah.
they're from very different worlds, but yet they have fallen in love, and they are essentially exact opposites. Fire and water. What does water do to fire? Well, puts it out. So like, how does this love story blossom in a world that is very like, it's still almost like segregated. So it's a deep love story when you want to view it that way, but if you just want to have fun and watch a nice love story that is beautiful. I mean, that movie is directed by the guy who voiced Socks in Lightyear, and he's also the he is the, not reference, but he's sort of the inspiration for Russell and Up. He's a very influential person at Pixar.
He is actually one more notable Pixar character.
I know what you're. I knew there was somebody I was leaving out. Who is it?
He is Remy's brother in
He's Amel.
Ratatouille. Yeah.
Emil or Amel. I think it's Emil. I think it's Emil, actually. Yeah,
Yep.
he is Emil. He's a very prominent person over there at Pixar, and that's his first movie, a directorial debut. And the Fire
Wow.
People, because I believe he's Korean, the Fire
Mhm.
People are about like his parents and how they felt coming over and kind of being almost exiled in a way. Like, you're leaving somewhere, you're leaving family, we're going to lose contact. That's just what's going to happen. And that's sort of a story, a love story to his parents of appreciation for where they came from, and also just how they viewed the world when they showed up. It felt like everybody was sort of with their own people, but this could be a melting pot. And why isn't it melting? Why isn't it a melting pot? It's a
Yeah.
very lovely movie. All right, folks, we knew there were some technical difficulties. There was echoing between the calls. We fixed it now. I want to go back to Soul because that was an interesting one. I watched both Soul and Wonder Woman 84 because they were both released on Christmas on Max and Disney Plus for everyone to watch. And I didn't like Soul when I first watched it. I don't know why. I can't tell you. Maybe it was just the mood I was in. It was kind of depressing, the first Christmas without family, and just the whole time just felt very down. And then I'm going to watch a movie about a guy who dies. And then I watched it about 2 because I knew I had missed something. I knew that I wasn't there present for the story. Watched it 2 days later. It went from a 2.5 star to a 5 star, just like that. It just took a couple of days of me to keep on, like, I kept on like doing like reminiscing on it and keep on thinking back on it, and I couldn't get it out of my mind, so I knew that I had to rewatch it because I knew there was something there. Really great one. Onward is one of my favorites because of its connection with a big brother little brother sort of
Mhm.
storyline where the big brother acts as a pseudo father figure, and I relate to that a lot. I'm a decade older than my little brother. I have been an adult most of his life, and I've always been a sort of pseudo parent, and I love that movie for it. And it also, comes down to losing a parent, like, really young. In the case of Ian and Barley, they lost their father when they were like baby and maybe 3 or 4 years old. For me,
Mhm.
I lost my dad when I was 20, and just that act of getting that final moment is always very gratifying, and like, it's a moment that really resonates with me, and it always makes me cry. Uh, but you were also talking about Turning Red, which is a movie that I think is the most controversial. And it's not the one that we were talking about before where we don't really like that movie, because obviously you talked about uh, Turning Red in high regards. Turning Red to me is such a wonderful story because it's so complex, but it's also right there, and it's so accessible. Them sort of doing like, not an allegory, but it's essentially like a young lady getting their period for the first time, or a young individual
Mhm.
getting their period for the first time, and feeling like you have lost control of something, that you are doing something wrong, that there's something inherently bad about this, but it's just human. It's just human. It's just human stuff. It's regular. It's supposed to happen, and
Yeah.
then making the big red monster be this giant, fluffy, adorable Snorlax Totoro-esque character, and making that sort of a, I don't know if the word allegory is correct, but essentially
Oh yeah, no, I think
for getting your period. And there's a lot of people that felt uncomfortable watching this movie, that felt like it was too much for kids. This teenage girl going through this for the first time, very uncomfortable. A lot of fathers even said it was uncomfortable watching it with their daughters and yada, yada, yada. Listen, I don't want to point fingers, but there's a lot of growing up to do in those sorts of situations, because there are so many teen comedies where it's about adolescence and sort of hitting puberty and going through all those hormonal changes. I think of Weird Science. Weird Science, I feel, is a movie that makes me incredibly uncomfortable. But it's roughly the same age, range, between 13 and 16. Like they're, making this Frankenstein monster dream girl who is like obviously way too old for them, and they're going and doing all these crazy things. That movie makes me way more uncomfortable than, say, Turning Red, which is just a movie about growing up and just going, something happening to you that is out of your control, that is just a normal part of the human anatomy. And I grew up with sisters. I mean, I have 3 sisters. I grew up with them. That sort of stuff, that sort of talking has never made me uncomfortable. And maybe I am in the minority of people who are like, "What's the big deal?" But for those people who are going through, the early stages of their menstrual cycles and whatever, it's okay. And this movie shows it. Like, it's okay to reach out to your family and to reach out to your friends and be honest and open, because that's the best way that you're going to get through anything in life. You can take this allegory for getting your first period and do that with any little thing in your life that pops up that you feel like, I don't have control over this. This was sudden. This makes me feel weird, and it makes me feel like an outcast. It's such a wonderful movie, and it's behind this very cute animation style where it is just like this big red monster, a literal monster. She turns into a giant red panda, and that's such a wonderful way to introduce most people, most audiences to that. And I feel like it doesn't get talked about more and shown more in even like schools or smaller, boy and girl clubs and whatever, because it's just such a an easy like entry into that sort of womanhood, or any young individual who gets their period. So that one for me, I love that one, just because you can take it and you can really put it into any scenario. It just so happens that it is going for that demographic, but you can really put it in any other scenario. And then plus they have like pop bands, and they just like throw parties, and they do other stuff in the movie. And again, you were saying the early 2000s aesthetic with all the bedazzled stuff and all the clothing and the in sync sort of things. What do you have to say?
Yeah, so let's talk about periods. So I am much like you, where it was never like an uncomfortable topic for me. I grew up more around my mom than my dad. Not that my dad wasn't in my life, but my dad would not come back to the house until like more in the like evening. So what I mean is like I just like spent more time with my mom. So that was never like an uncomfortable topic to me. And then as a person that wants kids one day, I couldn't see how like watching this movie would be like uncomfortable with my like that just isn't a thing that really computes with me. And then I think that you're right. I think that this would be a great thing to play like in schools, because that can be a very weird and uncomfortable topic. And if you just kind of do it within the like guise of like, hey, we're just gonna watch a movie, I do feel a little bit dumb, because I knew that there's a part in the movie where you see tampons. I didn't quite get how much of a metaphor it is until you referred to her as a big red monster. And then I was like, oh, the entire thing is a metaphor for it. I thought it was just like that one part. But no, like the whole movie is.
That's what Mei Ling's mother thinks is happening. Like, even though she is a big red panda herself, because she has suppressed that, she thought it wouldn't go to mailing, and or that it just wasn't time yet. Like, she just hasn't hit that age yet. So she was genuinely concerned. And it was the first time, I believe, in animation ever that we saw tampons and pads and all of those
Really?
hygiene products. And it's lovely. And we have what's her name? Sarah O or Sandra O.
Sandra Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she plays the mother in the movie, and she does a fantastic job. That whole movie is about like is about getting your period, and it's okay. Like, it's okay. And it should be okay, and it shouldn't be an uncomfortable topic, because it's just like any other thing that you do on a daily basis, whether you pee or whatever. This is something that needs to happen, and I think it's a really wonderful way of introducing it as a, it's an okay topic to talk about. My favorite pandemic era Pixar movie was Luca. I love Luca. I have seen Luca several times. I have some of my figures right here. Like, I have Luca himself. I have what's her name? Her name was Julia. And then I have Alberto and Massimo and Machiavelli. Oh, they're turned around. Machiavelli is the cat, and Massimo was the dad. I love those movies, man. I really love those movies. That aesthetic of Italy. It's very, like, I don't even know what year it is. It must be somewhere definitely within, like, maybe the 1960s, 70s. I feel like even maybe the 50s, because I think there are actually some posters and movies and television shows that appear that are direct, either rip-offs or, or the actual thing in the movie. I think it's like 50s, 60s era. Okay. I love that film. I love this fish out of water story. It's a classic story, and it's done really well. It's a easy watch, and that's why I love so much about it. It's so easy to fall in love with the characters, to understand where Alberto's coming from, and him without a father and kind of having this found family story, him eventually working with Massimo as like a fisherman, because he's a sea creature, so he knows where all the good spots are. It's just such a lovely movie about broadening your horizons, and going the extra mile, and disobeying your parents' orders is a really tough sell. And a lot of people, there was complaints. Of course, there was complaints when it came out that they being Pixar are showing children that it's okay to disobey your parents and run away. And that's not what the story's about. It's not about running away. It's about finding, I don't even know, about finding yourself. It's just about not being scared anymore. It's essentially what it's about. It's about not being scared anymore, because that's all Luca knows is don't go near the humans, don't go above the surface, avoid everything, be afraid of everything you see, be here at this time and then there at that time. Like, his life is completely controlled because of the fear of the top side. And it's just about not being afraid anymore, broadening your horizons. And I love that film. I love Luca. Again, I've seen it probably 6 or 7 times.
That is one that I have not watched yet.
Crazy to me.
And I need to watch it. I may go watch it right after we get done here. That is interesting that you bring up the controversy, because I feel like each and every time Pixar puts out literally anything, there's a we could have done this whole podcast on what Pixar film came out and what was the
the trigger
of
the trigger of sorts, which is like, I don't want to invalidate those people that really feel uncomfortable and yada 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 whatever. But genuinely, in the most nicest terms I can present to you, there's growing up to do.
Oh yeah. Well, and that one that you point out about Luca is very interesting, because I was telling you just before we hit record, but I just recently watched To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a very big and it's a very iconic story. those are the most disobedient kids I have watched on
They
screen
don't even
in a
call their
long
dad
time.
dad. They're
They
like,
don't
all
even
right, Atticus, all right, Atticus, whatever.
um there are like many points where he's like, all right kids, I'm gonna go take care of this very deep responsible thing. Y'all need to chill here. And as soon as he takes off, the kids immediately go. They like
They're gone.
immediately.
They're
So
gone.
like so, and the people that are complaining about this Pixar film, I'm sure would be totally fine with their kids watching that movie because they gr- grew up with that film. So it's
That's
like,
what I'm saying. Like, it's a
yeah,
double standard of like Turning Red against Weird
mhm.
Science.
Right.
Like,
No,
Weird
yeah, yeah,
Science
yeah.
is more adult, of course, but it's still
Hmm.
dealing with teenage adolescence and hormones.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
people are okay with these horny boys, but this girl having her period, that's gross. I don't like that.
Mhm.
What are you talking about? These
Yeah.
two young guys are going after this really like this 30-year-old woman. Get your priorities straight. If you're going to be opinionated, make
Mhm.
sure that across the board you know what you're talking about, and that you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, weird science also makes me uncomfortable. But I remember, because I have experience. The reason why I bring up Weird Science is because I had an experience like that where it was somebody who I knew enjoyed that movie, and
Mhm.
they were talking about Turning Red and the controversies around it that we've already discussed. And I said, well, isn't Weird Science one of your favorite movies? And it was dead silent. And he was like, ah, damn, you're right. Okay. And he was like, but it's different. And I'm like, how is it different? He's like, well, it just is. And I'm like, no, it's nostalgia. You thought it was funny because it was two guys. As soon as it's somebody, a young lady, it makes you
Mhm.
uncomfortable. That's all it is. There's growing up to be done.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. I'm not going to sit here and lecture you. It's just time to grow up. I've already opened your eyes. So you take the reins and you go forward. Um, but yeah, so I do now want to talk about, because we touched upon quite a few of these,
Mhm.
but there's one that even I forgot about when we were pitching this show idea back and forth to each other.
Mhm.
I named all the other movies except for Lightyear, and it's
Mhm.
because of how forgettable it is. Like, it was a movie that I brought my Buzz Lightyear action figure.
Look at
It's a
you with all the
movie.
toys, man.
Maybe. I mean, I come prepared. The movie Lightyear is essentially within the world of Toy Story. It's the movie that Andy watches in theaters that gets him into the character, the space age. And while watching Lightyear, it's an okay movie. It's fine. But I find it very hard to believe, and a lot of other audience members share the same feelings. I find it very hard to believe that the movie Lightyear is
Is the
what
movie that Andy
Andy
watched.
saw. It just doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
That,
It's way
yeah.
too. It's not even like. It's not even. It doesn't even fit the time frame of that, of like the late 90s. It
Oh,
feels
right, yeah.
like it should have been A New Hope, but it was The Force Awakens. How come? That makes no goddamn sense. Not even like the prequels that happened in the 90s. I felt like this movie really should, because you got to think about it this way. Even though we're in the 90s, Andy is still into cowboys. He is
Mhm.
still building, big saloons and towns, like, like Western towns. And his favorite toy is a cowboy, and he has a not prospector. He has a cowgirl, and he has, Bullseye. So there's a very big jump between cowboys to the space age. It should have felt very retro in nature, but they didn't do that. It was very dark, and it was grimy, and it was a movie that was kind of convoluted, because in the world of Pixar, they've already told us who Zurg is, the relationship between the two, but they decided to change it in the movie and expect us to believe that, oh, it's just some kid's bad imagination. No, that's just poor writing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's poor storytelling. It's not like, oh, it's like, Luke, I am your father. That's not the actual line of dialogue, but now it is, because our collective subconscious has made it so iconic. That's not, guys, you're Pixar. You could have done
Mhm.
better. This
Yeah.
movie should have been better. This movie had all of the ingredients. You have stuff like Buzz Lightyear of Star Command to go off of, a very beloved series,
Which
very
was
beloved
phenomenal. Yeah.
movie. But they didn't go in that direction. They should have gone colorful. When you are trying to sell toys, I get it. We only see Buzz, Zurg, and the little green men, the aliens. But when you're trying to sell a toy line like Star Wars, you're going to get all the colorful aliens and characters you can. So that movie should have been that. It should have been a movie about selling toys. It should have been campy, like almost like Joel Schumacher's Batman. But they didn't go that direction. They went dark and grimy, and I just didn't connect with it. Toy Story is my shit. This right here is my shit. I love Toy Story.
Yeah.
And while watching Pixar, it felt like soulless in a way. Like, why did this story resonate with an 8-year-old boy?
It would be like the equivalent of him going to watch Interstellar and being like, give me a toy like of him, of like,
it totally is an Interstellar type story where it's like everybody's aging, he keeps on leaving and coming back, and oh, now this person's dead and gone, but their daughter is now 30 years old and in charge, and it's like Hawthorne. That's the character's name. I actually remember it, Hawthorne.
There you go.
You know, it's such a strange movie for me to accept. Like, on its own, it's okay, but because it literally tells you from the beginning, this is the movie Andy saw in theaters. Now go. I'm like, let's back up. This is it just isn't it, guys. It just isn't it. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
Do you think they would ever take another crack at it? They'd probably have to wait like a bit.
They lost so much money on Lightyear. Out of all of the pandemic Pixar movies, they lost the most on Lightyear. Because people don't even like take into account, it's not just hours watched. It's marketing. It's all of the toy lines, all of the clothing, all of that, all the merchandise. Yeah. It was just peg holders or peg warmers. It was in the clearance. It's still, if you go to your local Walmart, I fucking guarantee you, if you go to the clearance aisle, you will still be finding Lightyear stuff. That's crazy. That's not what should happen. It's not only Toy Story, but it's Disney and Pixar. That should have sold like hotcakes, but they literally can't give it away for cheaper. Like, they are desperately trying to get rid of. I have so much Lightyear stuff that I've picked up that are just in boxes somewhere, just because they were literally like $1.25 for like a 6-inch figure. Packaging, everything's all nice about it. They were giving them away. They lost so much money. It would be it would be idiotic to do anything else for a while, especially not until after Toy Story 5. So we still got another 3 or 4 years until we see anything surrounding Lightyear again, whether it's a series, whether it's a remake. What if they do a remake? That'd be kind of funny, because like these sorts of movies would get remakes or like or a sequel series. Like, it would be kind of funny if they could try to rectify some of that stuff, but it feels tainted.
Dude, bring back Buzz Lightyear Star Command, put it on Disney Plus as an original TV. You know what I mean? Just give it 10 episodes, right? Just like a quick, just kind of, and watch the money just kind of.
I think that is way more likelihood of them bringing back Star Command in some capacity. Patrick Warburton was the voice of Buzz in that series. That's the series that I think they need to focus on. I had the toys growing up. Like, even though it was a short-lived movie / series, I still have them. The DVD is one of the hardest ones to find. I have it.
Really?
The series itself is super hard to find as well. And I'm not sure if it's on Disney Plus yet or not. I think they have the movie on there, but I don't think the series is available anywhere, which is unfortunate. And I'm not aware, at least, of physical copies. I'm sure they exist, maybe some episode compilations of sorts, but Disney is very, very weird about television and making physical media for it. So like even like recently with the MCU shows, there's people that are very, very, very passionate about collecting every single MCU thing on physical, and they only just released WandaVision, Loki on Steelbook somewhere. So Disney's just weird about
They
releasing
are really weird
shows
about
on
it. Yeah.
physical. But yeah, those are my thoughts, I think, on Lightyear. I didn't like it.
So just checked, it is not on Disney Plus. And I think the reason why they do that, and kind of to your point, like the reason why it is so tough to get Disney content on physical is because they like they like keeping it.
The Disney Vault. It's
Yeah.
iconic. The Disney
Yeah,
Vault
yeah.
was
They
created
like
by
being like nobody
Disney
has this. Yeah.
because he knew for a fact that at a time where physical media was not a thing, there was no VHS, there was no laser discs, there was no nothing.
Mm.
People still went to the theaters. He released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs nearly 100 years ago. That was the first feature-length animated movie of all time, and he knew in 10 years that there was going to be a brand new generation of kids who didn't know what Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was. So what did he do? He brought it out of the vault again. He created the Disney Vault. Every 10 years, he would re-release his movie back into theaters. Once physical media became a thing, he did that, or at least the company did that same thing where they decided, okay, every 10 years, we will re-release a new physical media. I think it became almost every 5 years by some point, but there was a time where you couldn't find Lion King in a store. Why? Because it was in the vault. And then once it was re-released, they had all these new special features, new technologies like Blu-ray and 4K and whatever, and they were able to then re-release it, and people would snatch up the diamond editions, the platinum editions, the all these different editions of these movies. That's just the Disney Vault, but in physical media form. Walt Disney and them are a bunch of cheapskates who literally could print money by just giving people what they want, but they decide to keep it, hold it on, and wait for it. I don't know if we'll ever see Star Command not only on Disney Plus, but ever on physical media. I think it's a likelihood more so than Lightyear would ever get any more treatment, but all the same.
Well, we have ways.
Well, we have ways, like we have ways, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
there's always ways to access these certain pieces of lost media, you know. But even like speaking upon Disney, you know, they have a bunch of media that they've deleted off their platform, like the Mighty Ducks television series. It's called Game Chasers or Game Changers, something like that. They had 2 seasons of that Mighty Ducks show completely wiped off the face of the earth. After the second season came out, like a couple of weeks afterwards, they had a movie called Crater. You know, that McKenna girl who was in like Ghostbusters Afterlife and all that kind of stuff. She was one of the stars of the movie. That thing was on Disney Plus for like 2 weeks. I watched it, and then it got taken off for tax write-off reasons. Wow. Not enough people were watching the new movie. And it's like, that essentially becomes lost media. If you're no longer going to provide it to me on an official platform, I'm taking my business elsewhere because I still want this stuff. You still made it. If I can appreciate it as much as I can and talk about it and whatever, I just hope that those people out there that made those projects feel at least some semblance of pride and appreciation, because it's very clear that Disney doesn't care. That was like, Crater was, you know, several months of people's lives on set and then in post-production, and they were proud. They had their names in the credits. This was someone directed this movie. Someone wrote the music for this movie. Someone did everything, made costumes. And then in a matter of like 2-3 weeks, it was wiped off the platform.
Well, and truth be told, that concept to me is so insane, because it's like, why make movies anymore? Like, the point of making these movies is to tell these stories. And like, if I go out and create a movie, one day I'm gonna want to play that movie for my kids, my grandkids, I'm gonna want them to like. And if it's like, oh, I made this movie 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but now it's gone. There's no trace of it anywhere. Like what is the point? Like that's just crazy to me.
It's greed. That's all it is. It's just greed, and it's one of those things that I'm hoping they're trying to rectify with Pixar, because over the last couple of years, Pixar has been sort of a money pit where they are feeding a lot of money in, but receiving it back has been sort of not something that they've been successful at. The most the best a movie has done so far is Elemental, and it was actually in theaters. It came out June 16th of 2023. It was in theaters for a short period of time, but its theatrical run ended, and it was put onto Disney Plus for renting and streaming and whatever, and then it exploded. It was like the Encanto effect. It blew up. And now there's a movie in development, a sequel, and then there was a mini series in development. There's spin-offs. Like, it exploded via streaming, and then allotted all of these creatives to continue pursuing stories in this world. That's really cool. It's still on physical. You can still support it that way, but it's also on streaming.
Speaking of which, okay. Yeah. Speaking of which, I have a very quick, cool story.
Okay.
So my wife works with a theater company. Oh. And she was at her job one day, and my wife knows that I collect Blu-rays, and my wife just hears a person down the corridor scream, "Does anybody want this Blu-ray?" And my wife was like, "I know somebody that would want this," and they gave her a brand new copy of Elemental, completely closed still too, like, and
baby, factory sealed. Come on now.
It was factory sealed. It was like straight from Best Buy, and I don't know like the context of like, did they buy it and then decide that they didn't want it, or did somebody give it to them but they're like don't really collect Blu-rays? I don't know what the context was, but my wife comes home and she's like, "Hey, like somebody at my job just like gave this to me," and that night we watched it and we're like, this movie is phenomenal.
Like, it really is.
Like, yeah, so
that's never happened to me. I've never been the only time that I've gotten free movies in like a weird way was behind a fucking an old Chinese takeaway restaurant, and behind their store there's a dumpster, and me and my buddy were dumpster diving, and we were driving past. It's legal here in Michigan. Come on now, don't fight us. We were driving past, and there was a big box of VHS tapes, not like inside the cardboard sleeve. They were just VHS tapes, and I was like, "Stop the car." You know, what's going on? I'm like, "Pop the trunk." I go grab it. It's pouring down rain, and these motherfuckers are soaking wet, but I'm like, it's free movies. We get home, bro. I cannot stress enough. My friend, I have never seen the fear of God in his eyes so much than when he picked up the box and looked inside and said, "It's infested with bugs," and dropped it. And earwigs just scattered all across my garage. And I was like, "Fuck this shit!" Threw it in the garbage can. I was like, "There's no possible way I'm going through this." On the very top of the box was, what's his name? He's one of Adam Sandler's friends. He's like in a movie called Animal, like Animal whatever.
Rob Schneider.
That's him. I don't care for Rob Schneider. I saw that movie and I was like, it's already garbage. And I was like, threw it away. That's the only time I've ever gotten like media in like a strange, cool way. And my shit was infested with bugs.
That is a different story.
I know, right? But it was the only I don't, you know.
Yeah.
So I do want to say that through this pandemic era of Pixar, we have gotten, in my opinion, some of their best stories, because they went through a big phase of giving sequels to Incredibles and Dory and Toy Story and Cars and all this stuff, and it's fine and fair enough, and I enjoy the hell out of those. There's not a single Pixar movie that I truly do not like. I enjoy them all, but there are two new movies coming up. It's sort of the transitionary era of Pixar moving forward, more bigger theatrical releases. We have Inside Out on June 14th of 2024, and then we have a Leo, which comes out, I have it on my paper, June 13th, 2025. So we only have one Pixar movie this year. I think we have like shorts and some series coming out as well. But Inside Out 2, I think that is a great way to really bring more people out into theaters. It's already a movie that's beloved. Inside Out's iconic, directed by Pete Docter, my favorite Pixar director, one of my favorite directors in general. He did Monsters, Inc., Up, and Wall-E as well. He's a phenomenal director.
He was also the director of Soul, I believe.
He was the director of Soul. He was, absolutely. That's why there's so much jazz influence in the movie, because he loves jazz. Monsters, Inc., jazz.
Yeah.
There's a correlation there. He's such a great director. There you go, baby. He is such a phenomenal director. I don't believe he is helming Inside Out 2 because he did just get done with Soul, and he wants to pass away some of those obligations to people that are newer or have been like waiting a long time to get their own movie. Because a lot of these movies, like Onward, Luca, Turning Red, Elemental, and Lightyear, I think were all done by brand new directors to Pixar. Like people that have worked there for years but are, new to directing, because Onward was a story that was told about a guy who lost his dad very young, and his brother was his pseudo father. It's a love story to his bigger brother. I do have Ian here in the van.
That movie had a steelbook that I wish I had grabbed. That steelbook was so cool.
It's the only pandemic era Pixar movie that I own. I have it on 4K. I found it at Big Lots for like $7.99.
There you go, buddy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really great stuff within this era of Pixar. I feel like a lot of people give it slack and say that they were just streaming movies or not important. The storylines are all over the place. Like I heard a lot of people saying that Pixar was like losing their touch, and I don't believe that's true. I think that they're expanding, and those people who think that they're losing touch or trying to put some agenda out there for children, those people are the folks who just need to grow up a little bit. There's some growing up to do, because that's far from the truth. These stories are about love, acceptance, loss, love. Like there's so much. Like Onward is about losing a parent. Soul is about losing oneself. You're dead. Like these movies are very, very crucial and important pieces of storytelling that, in my opinion, some of them are more impactful than like Toy Story 2, which was an amazing movie, but at its essence, it really is just sort of we need to get home to Andy. We need to get out of here. Like we need to go save Woody to come back home, to do the same mundane daily day, just playtime. A movie like Turning Red really will speak to people who are having those true experiences. It's not a homeward bound story. This is an experience about growing up.
Now, one thing that I will say is there was like a good 2-year stint there where Disney and Pixar were on their like parental trauma tour that they did lean into pretty hard. Because I do remember Turning Red came out around the same time that in Kanto came out.
Yeah.
And both of those films were like, look how terrible parents are.
There's a little bit of there is a big space. I do want to say that I believe Turning Red came out in March, and Encanto came out in November. They're the same year, but I do think but Encanto definitely had such a boom, because it did have a very short theatrical release, sort of like
that one blew up.
Strange World also had a Thanksgiving release. But Encanto had a small release. It did fairly well, but they still needed to put it on the streaming as soon as possible, and then it exploded. It was like the Frozen effect, really, of just Yeah.
Watching in Kanso with my wife's mom was very interesting because me and my wife were like, "Oh, so the grandma would be the bad guy." Like, and then my wife's mom was like, "Well, I mean, she could have just been," and it's like, no, look at what like I mean, so yeah, I feel like that one had a very just kind of like I could feel as we watched that with people from multiple generations, we kind of got that like multiple kind of different amounts of like of a response to it
Yeah, it's
in like
such
a lot
a
of ways.
when you have ensembles where there's different there's just it's just different across the board, and also including powers, like including abilities that are still real world stuff. Like me being a very big person, I'm 6'9", nearly 400 pounds. People expect me to be able to move mountains. That's not the case. And you see, you see
Mm,
the sister in the movie whose name is escaping me. She felt like she had the weight of her family's life on her shoulders.
yeah.
And then you had the one who was constantly eavesdropping because she could hear everything, and she was like engulfed in all these different scenarios of people's problems and whatever, and she couldn't close it out. It's like the same thing of having anxiety, and you're constantly hearing all these voices in your head that are all having problems, and they're all not meshing well together, and she's dealing with that on a constant basis. You have somebody who their ability is to transform into others. They are like constantly putting on new masks and new faces, and they have so many different personalities that they're acting. That's a whole different thing of like, what's my identity? Who am I? I can be
Yeah.
all these people. I can be anybody I want, but who am I? There's just so much in that movie. And then you have like the matriarch of the family, the grandma who doesn't have any abilities, and now you have the main character who his name I am forgetting at the moment. Mirabelle, I think is her name.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Maribel, she is sort of the new matriarch. She is the person who has no powers, but she is the love and compassion and the acceptance of the household, something that the grandma had lost touch on. That these are
Mhm.
still people that need that love, who need to be known that you are not just what you can do, you are an actual person who has feelings and opinions and has a life that they should be living. But I'm just saying, go pick up those donkeys.
Yeah.
It's just,
Um. l- Uh. Let me ask you this because you did kind of touch on this a bit. Whenever we talk about how like Disney and Pixar are kind of not what they used to be, I would agree with you that Pixar, I think, is still pretty strong.
I think
Um.
it's strong. That's
mm,
not my voices. That's just the voices of the internet. I
Uh.
believe it's still
Oh no.
strong.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say I do agree that maybe D- Disney is not kind of at the caliber that they used to be.
No.
I just went to see Wish near the end of this past year, and that was the first Disney film I saw after going to Disney, like in Florida, and being surrounded by Wish characters and all these things, and being like, I cannot wait until this
Yeah.
film comes out. Like this stuff all looks really cool. They had that goat. He was like literally like plastered everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and then I went to go watch the film, and it was like I really wanted to like that movie. Like I wanted it to be like a lot better than it was. Let me ask you this, because Disney has not quite scratched that itch for me. What I've actually found is that Illumination is like coming up, and they are this like powerhouse. I would be very curious to know what is your like. Do you feel that Illumination is kind of giving us something that Disney isn't at this current point in time, or?
I think that what Illumination is doing is sort of tried and true stories that they're putting their own little twist on it. they are sort of taking like with recently. I know how much you loved Migration. You
I did
really
love
love
that
that
movie.
story,
Yeah.
and it's a wonderful story that I did adore. But it's a very simple sort of fish out of water story, sort of like an ugly duckling. Like they are like stuck in this place, and this outside world is so like coming down on them. There's threats and whatever. It's about it's about a close knit family. It's about a patriarch who has a little bit too much control and is a little bit too scared and hesitant and just afraid. It's about spreading your wings and flying to far distances and getting new experiences. That's a lovely time. And I wouldn't say that Illumination is putting out my favorite stuff, because I do
Mm.
feel like Pixar and even like Sony are putting out more thought provoking stories, like the Spider Verse and Mitchell's versus
Mhm.
the Machines. Recently with Nickelodeon, they brought out Mutant Mayhem. I feel like what Disney is doing right now is they're too comfortable being in their like they're too comfortable. I think I'll put it that way. They need to spread their wings. They need to reinvent themselves a little bit. What Pixar has been doing with like Elemental and Turning Red and stuff like that is they're broadening their horizons. They're allowing themselves not only stylistically to look different, but to tell different stories from different perspectives. Disney is trying to do that, but they're sticking to the exact same looks and feels, like Encanto was a little bit different, but like recently they brought out Wish and Strange World. Strange World has been forgotten. People forget Strange World even came out. What they need to do is they need to reinvent themselves. They are currently stuck between a rock and a hard place. They are
Mhm.
animation. Disney is animation in the theatrical sense. But studios like DreamWorks with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish,
Oh, which was
Sony
phenomenal. Yeah.
with Spider-Verse and Mitchell's vs. Machines, Nickelodeon and Paramount with Mutant Mayhem, all of these movies are exploding onto the screen. People are now respecting animation again for a whole new reason, and Disney is sticking to their tried and true methods, which are getting I suppose they're getting old. I
Yeah.
don't think that necessarily, but in general, audiences are treating it that way. Like Disney, you need to do something new. You need to be a little bit different. You will come from a place where it was princesses who had lost a parent, who were swept up into this like weird thing of like, I lost a slipper. Now I'm a princess. I'm going off to war. I pricked my finger. Now I'm sleeping. It's like damsels in distress and whatever. They went from that to making them more powerful, more kick-ass. You have Merida, who is an official Disney princess, the only Disney or the only Pixar character that's an official Disney princess. Now she's kicking ass. Then you have a character like Rapunzel, who's now kicking ass. There are like they're trying their damnedest, but they are just getting left to the wayside because of movies like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish
Mm.
that took something that was already so iconic, like the Shrek franchise, and made it better. They elevated it in every single way, both stylistically and story wise. They have reinvented that entire
Mhm.
franchise in an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Toy Story 4, although really great, did not reinvent the franchise at all. Toy Story 3 did, but then Toy Story 4 didn't deliver.
Mm.
It didn't deliver in that aspect. I love Toy Story 4, but you're telling me that every ounce of character progress that Buzz has made is going to be entirely wiped from the movie, and he is going to be treated as if he is incompetent, that he can't make decisions for himself, that he is lost in his purpose, and now he's using his inner voice, his inner monologue for every little thing he does? No, that's
Yeah.
not who Buzz is anymore. So it just I think that Disney as a whole needs to reinvent the stories they're telling, and maybe that is visually as well. They tried it a little bit in Wish, but overall, as a celebration of its 100th anniversary, every Disney movie, when you wish upon a star, da na 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 na, that is the wishing star. That's the wishing star from Pinocchio. That right there is iconic. And for the 100th anniversary of your company releasing all of these integral, vital, super important movies, that's what you deliver us? That is all encompassing the 100 years of magic? I can't do that. That's not it. You missed the mark. You completely missed the mark. And that's what they should have done. They should have done the Puss in Boots method, where they really do reinvent. They really do show appreciation for the worlds that have been built. Because DreamWorks, Shrek is one of their earlier movies. I think that's their first.
I
Not
think
their
it is
first.
too.
Uh,
No, yeah.
well, it's not their first. Ants is their first, but then they had stuff like
Ants.
then they had stuff like the Prince of Egypt and stuff like that. But they need to reinvent it. They need to bring it in a new direction. They need to stop doing the tried and true method, because at the end of the day, tried and true does not equal growth.
Yeah.
You know, fear is not safety. They're kind of afraid. And right now they should be afraid, because these companies that they have essentially squashed like a bug for all these years are printing money, because they're putting out new stories and reinventing old ones like Mutant Mayhem did.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. Like I love Illumination, I love Sony, I love DreamWorks, I love all of these even smaller like Blue Sky did a lot of really great stuff, like Rio. Now Blue Sky has been dissolved and Disney owns all that stuff. But
Oh, really?
yeah. So I didn't know that was a question. I saw your head tilt and I was like, I think he asked me a question. Yes, Blue Sky was dissolved back in 2021, I think.
Well, because
they were bought out. So now
Blue
that's
Sky
why,
did Ice Age, right?
Yes, that was their big franchise, Ice Age. They did like 5 of those movies, and then when Disney bought them out and brought them over to the Disney family, they did a TV series, I believe, or maybe a movie for Disney Plus about Simon Pegg's little, I think his name was Butch or something like that.
Oh,
is a little muskrat guy with the eye patch. Yeah. They did a little movie for that, and it was a Disney Plus original. It didn't do very well. So they've kind of abandoned all the Blue Sky stuff. They just own the catalog, but they're not really doing much with it.
I need to really grab a lot of these movies. I think my biggest takeaway of this talk is I need to grab a lot of these on Blu-ray before they're just gone. I need to expand. So I have these 2 right now, but I don't know if you can tell, they're kind of close to the bottom.
Yeah.
So I need to add a couple of more. But
you need to add a lot more. You need to get all the animated movies ever, because seriously, these are really difficult to make. These are such labors of love for everybody involved. When you hear folks talk about making movies, like Willem Dafoe, he did an interview where he was going back and watching all his old like clips and stuff from movies and just talking about his experience. And when he got to Finding Nemo, he could not stop praising Pixar for what they did. He was like, when I walked in, you know, he's playing a character, I think he's playing Gil, I think is his character. Well, he said, I had to say the same line in 30, 40 different variations. I was blowing my voice out, but was it ever fun? They knew what they wanted. They allowed us to play, and it was such a great experience. That's what I love. When I hear Tom Hanks and Tim Allen were crying at the end of Toy Story 4, saying, you know, so long, partner, and To Infinity and Beyond, that stuff right there is such a powerful moment. And I love these movies for that, because they connect so much with these characters. When they were casting Toy Story 3, they wanted desperately to bring back the young boy who played Andy. And the last time he was around was 1999 when the second movie came out. So what do? They don't know how to contact him. They have a name and like his old address. He had moved since then. So they're looking online trying to find this kid. Come to find out he's going to college. They get a number from the like the desk people, like the emergency contacts. So they get his number, they call him, they get his voicemail. When the director hears the kid's voice, he's like, it's perfect. He still hasn't grown up yet. He still has this young voice. And he comes in and he gets after a decade of saying goodbye to these characters. He's a grown man now. He's going to college. He's pursuing new things in his life. And so is Andy. So he gets to come back and have one last session of playtime. And I love that. These movies are very important. The young girl who played Boo in Monsters, Inc., she was like 2 years old. They were just chasing her around with a microphone and just getting random babble, trying to feed her lines, and then they were going to just kind of try to make something up in post. All of these amazing moments, like Boo's song that she sings while using the potty, that was just Mary Gibbs, the actress, singing while playing, and they were like, okay, we'll use it in the movie. And Boo's real name is actually Mary Gibbs. If you look it up, her actual name is Mary Gibbs. On her drawings that she draws, it says Mary Gibbs on it, and that's the actress. And she goes to all these conventions and she talks to people about her experience as much as she could remember, but she's still such a core part of the community. And John Goodman and Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal was originally supposed to be Buzz Lightyear,
Really?
and he on it, and he said,
I could
no,
not
I
picture
don't
that
want
at
to do
all.
it was either Buzz Lightyear or Woody. It was one of the two, and he
I
passed
could
on
picture
it.
him being Woody. I couldn't picture him being Buzz. That is insane.
And he passed on it, and what happens? It comes out, and he is like, this is the biggest fumble of my career. He calls them, whatever you guys are doing, I want to be a part of it. I will say one line, just let me be in the movie. And they were like, hey, we're developing this movie about monsters in the closet coming out, yada, yada, yada. Are you in? He's like, cool, I'll be there. And now Mike Wazowski is one of the most iconic characters in all of Pixar, and John Goodman loves his role as Sully. That's why they reprised it in not only Monsters University, but the Disney series, not Disney Pixar, the Disney series Monsters at Work, because they're so passionate about these characters and about these worlds. These stories are important. Once you get the behind the scenes making of any movie, like if you don't like a movie, go watch the behind the scenes. You will appreciate it nonetheless. You will, by the end of it, whether or not you like the movie, you will appreciate the hell out of it, just because of all these small anecdotes and stories and what have you. It's just, I love it, man. I love it.
I agree. Well, I think that is a perfect place to put a button on this, man.
I appreciate the conversation.
Zedzilla Stompers, thank you so much for coming out, man. I appreciate you. If you guys have not already, go ahead and subscribe to Zedzilla Movies on TikTok, where he is over there. And if you pay him a quarter, he will take off his t-shirt.
Baby, it's a gumball right there. A quarter's a gumball. And before you guys leave, make sure to stick around and subscribe to the Masters of Matinee YouTube channel. We have tons of new episodes coming out. We are also starting a TikTok here soon. So hopefully by the time you're watching this episode, we already have 1,000 followers. Folks, we really, really appreciate you. Teo the Terminurtle. We have JT the Talking Head. Droobies Doobies Movies, Judas Cinema Closet, all these amazing folks. Please go show your support. We love you.
Guys, it's been great being your host today. I'm not the stepdad. I'm just the dad that stepped up.
Until baby.
Hasta la vista.
Talking to you when I talk to you.
Now for something completely different. Masters. 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 Masters of Matinee. Masters of Matinee. Starring Droobies Doobies Movies, Judas Cinema Closet, JT the Talking Head, Teo the Terminurtle, and Zedzilla Movies. Masters of Matinee.